All right, so you don't want to play favorites, but I think it's safe to say me and Jose's favorite journalist is probably Rachel Maddow. We love her so much. We actually went to meet her in person, which we'll see in this segment. So just to remind you of who Rachel is, the way she did this week reminded everybody again of who she is. Let's see one of those fun compilations.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia hates Russia, Putin, Russia's Russia, Moscow, Russian pro-Russian, Russians, Moscow, Russia against us, Russians, Russia against the U.S. The Russians, the Russians, Vladimir Putin, Russia, Putin and Russia, Moscow, Russia, the Russians, Russia, Putin, Soviet Empire, the second of the 20th century's great evils, communism, Russia, assault by Russia, Putin despises the West in general and the United States in particular, Soviet Empire. Russia, they're the adversary. They want to bring us down, the Soviet Union. Russia. Undermine the West, Soviet communists on the left. Russia, that does it for us tonight.
Typical evening of Rachel Maddow. So somebody with an ounce of shame, which she does not have. We weren't able to bring it out in her anyway. If she has any, would shut the fuck up about Russia at this point. After the Mueller report, you even had her fellow PSYOP journalists throw her under the bus to evade responsibility for their own part. You even had the New York Times, liberal class rag New York Times, the Bible of the liberal class, attack Rachel Maddow. You would think she would shut the fuck up about Russia, but she doesn't have to because of the audience that she's serving. That audience will never hold her accountable. So she is trotting this back out now. So this week she did a whole segment about how the DNC convention, which I will be at, everybody's going to that. Jimmy's going, as far as I know, Nick Cruz is going, our friend Anish Shivani is going. Everyone is descending on Chicago for this thing. And apparently Vladimir Putin as well.
So as we head into the summer of another election year, with Democratic leaders this year worrying about plans for protests at the party's convention in August in Chicago, there is a growing expectation that the same actors that Russia might try once again to exploit Democratic divisions. I mean, I say this not just because of 2016, but because of what's going on in 2024. As a reference point, Russia's been really feeling its oats recently in terms of election interference in Europe. Elections for the European Parliament start later this week. Russian trolls have flooded the zone with fake news sites and damaging deep fake videos. They've been pushing inflammatory disinformation that's aimed at inflaming European divisions over issues like the war in Ukraine. European intelligence services say the Kremlin has funneled hundreds of thousands of euros to dozens of hard-right politicians in a bunch of different European countries, paying them to plant Kremlin propaganda in Western media outlets, boosting pro-Russia candidates in the process. Russia is really scaling it up in terms of what they're doing for election interference around the world. And we have an election this year too. Maybe it is not surprising, but still bracing to open up a Chicago paper today and read this. Russian propaganda push expected in Chicago for Democratic National Convention, experts say. One expert telling the Chicago Sun-Times is,
okay, so first of all, I don't know if any of you have read it. This was already a couple of years ago. So with Trump, there were definitely things going on with his campaign that were kind of like, what's up with that, right? But it didn't trace back to Russia. Or, all of these investigations, the Mueller report, all concluded there was no evidence of that. But there was stuff that was weird. The Nation did an article that if we actually had a media would be very well known, where they showed actually the country that Trump was colluding with was Israel. Israel actually was colluding with the Trump campaign. We just had a story. Did we wind up doing it, or we still haven't done it? The meta story?
Yeah, no, there was an online influence campaign, much like what they said Russia did in 2016, which is they had Facebook trolls go out and put out memes that, compared Trump favorably to the Democrats and things like that. Only this was AI, so it wasn't a troll farm, it was an actual Israeli bot farm.
And this is current.
This is current. This is current. And there was the Nation article that said that Israel basically colluded with Trump in 2016. But you don't see a montage like the one we just showed about Israel. I would love to see a montage of Maddow. Jew. I won't see that.
So now, and this is how this has always functioned, and that's what makes Maddow particularly disgraceful. She really just serves power to discredit dissent and to define dissent out of bounds. This is very much in keeping with what they did with Sanders, where he was leading, and all of a sudden, Bernie Sanders, according to intelligence services, is Russia's preferred candidate. This is very much this. So now they're setting up the narrative. If you go to protest at the DNC, you're working for Russia.
Well, this is a really interesting question. Like, let's say Donald Trump were president when all of this was happening, and he was funding Israel just as he says he would, right? Would they, on MSNBC, be running stories accusing anti-genocide protesters of being Russian agents? Probably not, because Donald Trump would be, overseeing the mass murder of the people in Gaza. And so people who are protesting that would get the added, bonus in the eyes and minds of the MSNBC audience as being anti-Trump, right? If you tie something to Trump, it's okay to say we don't like it.
Actually, you raised an interesting point.
I mean, it's a question because Israel seems to supersede everything, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, that's going to be a real mindfuck for the MSNBC crowd if Trump is elected.
Yeah.
And he's cracking down on these student protesters.
Right.
And they have to support it.
They were Hamas back a year ago. They were Hamas. Now they're not anymore.
That's making the case for electing Trump.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean that is. I mean, people have made that point before that if Trump had been president now, these movements might be 3 or 4 times as big because everyone to the left of Mitt Romney might be out in the streets. I mean, if they were out in the streets over Trump's tax returns, right? This is what they were. They had a tax march under Donald Trump. Was it about raising taxes on the rich? No, it was about Donald Trump needs to show his tax returns.
Well,
right?
they had the Seinfeld march, the march about nothing, the women's march.
Yes.
This is just a target-rich stew for the Russians to try lots of things and see what works.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get some borscht.
We have an election this year too. Maybe it is not surprising, but still bracing to open up a Chicago paper today and read this. Russian propaganda push expected with confidence, including to you and your colleagues at the Sun-Times, about how they're preparing for everything. They're ready for anything. There's been a lot of focus, obviously, on the expectation for pro-Palestinian protests and protests against the war in Gaza. But is it your sense, or are you hearing from Democratic officials, from convention planners, that they are sort of on the alert for malign efforts like the ones you and your colleagues described today?
We haven't heard that from, planning officials, the Secret Service and Chicago Police Department, the people who are kind of like coming up with the protest zone and, where people can protest around the stadium, the United Center. These were more from us having this idea of saying, hey, this foreign influence campaign had such a huge impact on the 2016 election. What's happening now? And so we started to do research, and we started to, as news reporters do, pick up the phone and call very smart people.
Very smart people. Very smart people are saying that the Russians are going to influence the campaign. Look at how remarkable that. Why are you doing this segment? He just conceded he hasn't even heard this from anyone in authority. We just, we thought, hey, why not generate paranoia about Russian election interference.
People-
We talked to people who were supportive.
A lot of very smart people are saying it. I don't want to be too hard on this guy. As someone who doesn't always get around to shaving his neck beard before he goes, I kind of do admire that this guy's trying.
Tusker, why are people always picking on Russia?
Because, like I said, because Russia is a very large landmass filled with tons of natural resources, and they have sovereign control over their country. And we don't like it when a country has sovereign control over their resources, no matter where they are in the world, no matter whether they are liberal or communist or fascist. Now, the fascists will work with, because they'll help us get those resources from the people, but the others, not so. So that's always been the problem. They want to balkanize Russia. They want to split it up into tiny little pieces. They literally do want to install puppet governments. Like all the Zelenskys and all the people in Serbia and all those, not Serbia, they're not one. But like all of those people, to have those puppet governments to be able to put in their NGOs, to be able to run their PSYOP information campaigns, put their ruling class involved, and then they can dangle those countries by a string and suck up all the natural resources. They want to do that with Russia, they want to do it with China, and they want to do it with Iran.
Touche.
By the way, shout out to Status Quo for finding this footage. We invited Jordan here. We offered him dinner and a show, and we never heard back.
I can't believe he didn't show.
He didn't want to see cats. No, I actually love it. I mean, I'm not making any secret of this. This has been going on for over a year. I'm supposed to have a beer with Jordan because I've said this many times on the show. Jordan is a fucking tragedy to me because he has alienated the people who would show his journalism the most. He's put us in a position where we almost can't use it because then the whole segment is going to be about Jordan. It's going to be this litigation of Jordan. And
Case in point.
Exactly. And I do believe he cares about these subjects. You know, a lot of people say, well, he's exploiting those subjects. Listen. That is not the way to make money in this space. Okay, it's not. You want to make money in this space? We're gonna be doing a segment later on about there's one particular podcaster whose whole career is talking about how New York is collapsing. This fucking guy gets like 1 million views on this. Oh, he films a tent, and oh my god, it's like 1.5 million views. That's the way you grip. So I don't think that's what it is. And really, as that kind of journalist, that kind of investigative journalist, you're doing stuff about poisoned water, you don't want to be the subject. You don't want to be the subject. He made himself the subject. So
I mean, if Jimmy Dore poisoned the water, then that would get. You do pretty well off of that.
That's it. You know, I would love to bring him back to the light because there's no like, hey man, you don't have to agree with people. You don't have to like people. Shut the fuck up. Just talk about poison water, man, because actually people like RBN, people like us, people like Jimmy are the ones who actually care about that. The more PMC commentators, yeah, I mean, they'll throw it on once in a while to feel better about what they're doing, but they don't care about it to that extent. They're not working class that way. So, that having been said, Jordan?
And a lot of what we heard was, yeah, this is like what Max Bergman said, a target-rich stew here, right? We have, protesters, Palestinian protesters targeting the president right now. We have, issues with racial justice and things like that the Russians have seized on.
Yeah. We'll get to that. All right, do we want to say anything else about this?
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah.
So they're pulling out all the stops already. Russiagate is back, being led by the chief Russiagator. Seems like old times, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I shouldn't say it's anything new because it's not anything new. But people who were ahead of the curve on this said that they're Russiagating Donald Trump now. They will Russiagate the left when it suits them to. And now you see this: the Russians are rallying the protesters to Chicago. There was a huge rally in D.C. yesterday surround the White House. The Human Red Line. Was Russia behind that? I mean, it's just so absurd. It's just so insane. You read any public opinion poll, majorities of the people oppose what's going on. And so what? That's all what Russian spent. Where? Again? Where was any citation of anything in that section?
Right. He literally said, well, no, not from the Chicago police,
Right,
Secret
right.
Service. Just
Yeah.
we thought, hey, since that happened in 2016, which Mueller report, okay, like what? Why are you still arguing that as if it's an established fact and not something debunked? Talking about WikiLeaks and which Julian, who hopefully will be free soon, kicked it. We can hope. Always denied that was his source. He always denied that was his source. So it's just incredible, and a lot of you have probably had this experience if you're here with us today of watching a lot of your friends go batshit crazy and turn into 1950s Republicans. Like my whole life, people who foamed at the mouth about Russia were right wingers. It is just incredible. It's incredible. It's one of the most remarkable psyops I've ever seen. Seeing people who think they're liberal or left become these McCarthyites with no sense of irony. You remember those were the same people when Good Night and Good Luck came out because they perceived it as a protest against the Bush administration. They all ran out to see that, and you don't see the irony of accusing all political dissenters of being Russian agents. Like this has been part of the left mythos since the 50s of the evils of red baiting. You don't hear yourself? Amazing.
I think the biggest shock for me is when Stephen Colbert brought out George Bush, and the audience was like, weren't all these people protesting Bush just like two decades ago on this? So, big shock.
All right, so me and Jose decided to get together. We were mostly solo artists, but we did a joint album. And we went to Maddow's book reading, and I decided to have a little jam session. Now, when you do this kind of thing, you have to do some coordination ahead of time. So we decided to sit apart so we wouldn't both get kicked out together, and we figured out who was going to go first and how this was going to be done. And Jose said, "I'm not listening to that fucking fuck. I'm not listening to her read. As soon as she starts to talk, I'm going." And you can see in the footage, true to his word, as soon as she started talking, Jose was right on it.
He goes, no, I'd rather not listen to your boring book because you were here. Pause. Legendary.
You made him grab him.
And all you do is tell lies about it.
It was October 17th, by the way.
Yes.
It was like, October 17th. Yes.
Look at these rules.
He was one of the most successful and celebrated industrialists.
Yeah, that's more interesting, right? Yeah.
All right, so now for me, I'm just a Zoolander fan. I just wanted an autograph from Ben, but it went sideways very quickly.
I don't know how you. I was anticipating you like, okay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and he's still.
Well, I waited for the Q&A. I actually waited for the Q&A.
Okay, I do tell people to wait for the Q&A. I do, when I teach people how to do these things, I say Q&A is the way to go, but God damn it, it's Rachel.
Rachel, would you consider Benjamin Netanyahu an authoritarian foreign leader? Sit down. Sit down. Please answer that. Would you consider Netanyahu a dangerous authoritarian foreign leader? Will you answer that?
Did
Will
you
you
shoot
stand up for the DNC who have been taken off the air? Will you speak for them? Will you speak up for them? What do you call a country that bombs people in a hospital? Is that fascism? Do you only see fascism when it's wearing a red hat?
And now that was, as Jose said, that was only 10 days after October 7th. Now I'm pretty sure we'd be arrested. Like they weren't thinking that way yet. You hadn't had all this media backlash. You didn't have these enormous protests. College campuses hadn't erupted yet. Now I very much doubt we would have exited without handcuffs today.
I think it would have been funny if she just said this damn Russians in the audience.
She didn't want to say anything because she doesn't want to encourage it. Ben Stiller couldn't say anything because people might think Rachel Maddow said it if so his hands were tied. He had to keep his mouth shut. But yeah, it's funny. We got those tickets like months before October 7th, figuring we would troll her some way with the RUSSIAGATES.
Right. Yeah. That was before October, because obviously you don't buy those last time.
Yeah. And then October 7th happened, and we're like, maybe we should do something a little more substantial.
Yeah. Originally it was going to be RUSSIAGATE.
Yeah.
We were gonna do a RUSSIAGATE intervention, and then October 7th happened. But yeah, Jose, I don't know about him. Like the worst part of doing that kind of an intervention, yeah, whatever, ideologically and all that, man. You got the old ladies who had to get up to let you in, thinking about what's going to happen to them with security, like body checks that day.
Actually said that you actually told this to us. A trade secret of the intervention thing is sit in the middle near as many debilitated old ladies as possible because it takes them longer to get out of
That is true. At that point, they are objects to my goal. No, it's true. The old ladies are there. They don't know, and they're nice too. I mean, I was kind of nervous and fidgety, and one of the old ladies next to me could kind of tell, and she was just like, "Oh, you're nervous?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a journalist, and I really love Rachel Maddow." I'm just so excited. I was like, "Oh, so good for you! I'm so happy you're here."
Yeah, when I did the Nikki Haley intervention, which were nowhere near as good as yours, but I was doing two things because I was in New Hampshire interviewing the crowd, and you're trying to be really nice to them when you interview them. You try to really blend in like you're one of them, and then very subtly sneak in questions like, "So, what's your favorite war that Nikki Haley has?" And you try and be as subtle about that as possible because you don't want to tip them off to the fact that you're hostile. And then, you get in the room and you just become hostile. I always thought, how would the people who just gave me an interview react to that? Like, isn't that the guy who was very nice and sweet and innocent and just asked me why I was here and why I was supporting Nikki Haley? And yeah, what, he just lose it? Or was I set up? They were set up.
We've had that happen before where somebody who was sitting just next to us was just being nice to us. We're just talking. They get dragged out with us. And it's people who want to be at the event are like, "No, I'm not with them. I'm not with them."
Well, one of the things that's amazing is that, we were a little worried when you went first, Russell had to film you. So we're like, okay, if Russell's filming you, are they going to take him out because they're going to suspect he's in on it? But now in the smartphone era, everybody was filming you. Everybody's like this. So then Russell blended in and was able to go again.
Yeah, I had my glasses on. Like, look, man, that's some middle-aged white guy shit, man. They don't suspect. It's true. They don't suspect you.
He didn't even have to wear a Ukraine button.
Please clap.